Hello, Not Manly here. Welcome back to episode 24 of Kerbal Space Program. After a pretty long break, we're checking up on Samvi, Lizzle, and Notlorf Kerman at the Gilly Base, where mining is pretty slow going right now. We're gonna have to do something about that. We're gonna try to send up a resource scanner in a future episode, and we'll try to get this mining going a little quicker. In the meantime, we've already transmitted some science. We don't really have enough to do another transmission. And speaking of transmissions, we've installed Chatterer, but we've disabled the chat for a little bit of extra ambiance for these episodes. In the meantime, we've got a rescue high above Eve that is going after Zell Kerman. Now, this craft I assembled from two parts sent up on the Riser Force 7, our production single stage to orbit craft for the use above Eve. I sent this up in 2 launches. Jebediah had brought this thing up and brought himself back home safe. And we're sending this 2-piece craft out to go get Zell Kerman. Apparently, Kerbal Engineer thinks we have 3.4 kilometers per second, but I'm not so sure. Kerbal Engineer's given me some problems before with craft assembled in orbit, so we'll have to see how well this works out. In the meantime, we're getting ready for our ejection burn, and I'm looking at this and I'm going, wait a minute, we're kind of pointing in the wrong direction here, aren't we? Then I change the orientation. I take control from here, from the command pod, and then we go in the right direction. We're going to intercept Zellmore out at the ascending node. That way we avoid having to spend Delta V on a plane change, moving so fast and so close to Eve. The catch-up with Zellmore's Shipwreck should only be about 600 meters per second. But just doing that ejection, which was about 1100 meters per second, we went from 3.4 down to 1.5 kilometers per second. Already, I think Kerbal Engineer is going to give us problems on this trip. But hey, let's see what happens. We can always do our same cunning plan that we had last time. We had a stranded purple in orbit, and we needed to deorbit them. Here comes the approach to Zellmore's Shipwreck. Looking pretty good so far, but we've got a lot of relative speed to wipe off there. A few minutes later, we're caught up quite nicely, and we got a pretty close approach. There's Zell Kerman. Another pilot. We could certainly use a few more of those. Get aboard there, Zellmore, so we can bring you back home safe. And there you go. Now, we've got a ways to go before we can really deorbit her. We don't have enough Delta V to do the deorbit right now, but if we wait till we get to Apoapsis, we could do it. In the meantime, we've got Jeffrey Kadker and Valentina Kerman approaching Gilly, and we have our first Gilly anomaly. Hopefully, there'll be more to find out there. We'll track that down later after we get everybody settled. We've got a pretty large convoy coming into low Gilly orbit. There's this group of tourists and Valentina. There's another group of tourists under probe control that we're going to rescue another engineer stuck in orbit above Gilly. We've got some relay probes attached to these craft, and we're going to deploy one of them right about now, as soon as we finish closing our orbit. There we go. I've got that 2-hot thermometer up because we got some temperature contracts. We might just stumble upon one of them as we're doing our work up here. There we are. We circularize above Gilly. Now, we don't have that much Delta V left. In fact, maybe we have enough just to deploy that satellite, and then we'll be stuck here for a few days until we can get a refueling craft out here. But the Gilly refueler is on its way. We'll be able to sort that out. Whoops. Yeah, let's check that. It's a good thing we checked the tank of our little satellite. There we go. Let's get some gas in there. There we go. Liquid fuel oxidizer. Doesn't seem to matter which direction we do the transfer. It's going to take just as long with that Oscar B fuel tank. Tiny little fuel tank. That little bit of fuel and oxidizer will go a long way with that little craft and the Ant liquid fuel engine. We get all that sorted out. Oh, there we go. Now we can eject this craft and extend those relay antennas, and we'll be able to communicate with probes on the far side of Gilly. There we go, very gentle ejection there as the craft gently slides out of our service bay. Oh, we don't seem to have any control. That probe's short-range antenna is too short-range to reach all the way to Eve, even with the relays we have in orbit. So what we'll do is we'll send Valentina out, and she can extend those antennas for us. There we go, Val, get out there. Now, you don't need any special skills just to go and activate things on the sides of a craft. You can be a pilot and maybe just press a couple buttons, and there you go. We can extend those antennas. We can extend that solar panel. Now we should have enough control over this probe. Yeah, we got signal now. There we go, activate that engine. Clear it away from the main craft. Oh, we don't seem to have any control over this. What'd we forget? Oh, let's check. Yeah, we disabled reaction wheels. Let's go turn those back on, and we should have... There we go. Well, we got some rotational control over this little satellite again. And with those relay antennas, we'll be able to relay signals back to the far side of Gilly and not lose contact with any of our craft on the surface. That'll be important for any future tourist missions we send up here. Just checking up on Zell. Yep, there we go. Up at Apoapsis, our deorbit burn is only 493 meters per second. We have just over 500. While we're waiting for that, we're sending up a resource scanner. We're going to check out resources on the surface of Eve first. Not because we need the resources on Eve, but because I'm trying to find out where... Whoops. You think I'd learn how to... Oh boy, I think I forgot how to fly these things. There we go. Let's try this again. Well, that didn't work out so hot. Let's try again. Guess I'm a bit out of practice here. There we go, 4 times regular speed. You know I got it right this time. We're going to send this probe into a polar orbit. We have a resource scanner on here, not because we're looking for resources on the surface of Eve, but because we are looking for where the ocean ends and where the land begins. I'm trying to find out just how to get to that EVA contract we have out there on the surface. There seems to be a rather large body of ocean between us and it. So we're going to send up this survey scanner into a polar orbit. Definitely not the most efficient ejection burn I've ever done. I'm out of practice, what can you say? So we try this again. But we have got tons and tons and tons of delta V. Look at that. On this one stage alone, we got 2.9 kilometers per second. There we go. We should be able to do this orbital insertion without too much trouble. Okay, look at that. Just thrusting for our life. Oh, not quite, but hey, we got 2.5 kilometers per second on the probe itself. We should have no problem finishing closing this orbit. There we go. We'll fix that up a little higher as we go. There we go, sending our survey data up. If you had a real mod installed for survey scanning, it would take a lot more time to map out the surface, but hey, this is just stock resource scanning. I think I can see where the land is. Still, that cloud cover is giving me trouble even with just the readouts from the stock game. You'd think we'd have an easier time finding this. Anyway, the Gilly refueler has found its way above Gilly and it's going to do its orbital insertion. We will dock the Gilly refueler with the Gilly Base, top it up with some fuel, and send it up to Valentina. Probably will send Natlorf up there as well on her EVA pack so she can attach that EVA transfer pipe. That way Val and her tourists will be able to get back home safe. This insertion takes a little while. Oh, and check out the exhaust plumes. We've added real plume stock to this installation as well. So the engine plume should look a little better. And certainly you heard that major launch a moment ago with the roaring of those mighty twin-bore engines. And here's our first batch of tourists anyway. Gilly Amusements 4. Ledley and Sisgar Kerman, we're going to meet up with Stabal Kerman, somewhere stuck right above. Now we're approaching, but they're in an exact opposite orbit from us. But hey, this is Gilly. We can do a handbrake turn in just like nothing. In fact, we do just that. Rendezvousing with Stabal's crew Mark 1 pod right now. Stabal is an engineer, so we can certainly use their help right now. We'll need engineers to help refuel these craft up in orbit. And here's Stabal coming out now. We're going to have her eject that satellite. There we go. We have yet another relay above Gilly. This time we've got local probe control because of the other relay. We'll just extend those antennas, make it a little more independent. Yeah, let's get that reaction wheels back turned on. There we go. Extend, extend, and extend. There we go. Two relays above the surface of Gilly should help us keep tabs on probes. Now let's catch up with Zell more. Supposedly we have 500 meters per second, but I think Kerbal Engineer is lying to us here. We started off with nearly 800 meters per second orbital speed, and we are running out of fuel rapidly. Come on. Come on. Let's get that deorbit done. Nope. Does not look good at all. We're going to run out of gas before we can finish deorbiting this craft. 500 meters per second. We only dropped by just under 270. Well, you know what we can do? We can send Zelmore out of her rescue craft, and she can get out and push. Now, yeah, we can go back and forth above, back and forth into that pod, and we can do the orbit, but you know what? Who has the time for that? I just took liberties. I turned on infinite propellant, and I just pushed this thing for a good 30 minutes. It took a long time, as you can see, but we managed to deorbit this craft to about periapsis of 32 kilometers. We should be able to return safe. Come on, Zelmore, get back on there. We can bring it back home. That was a very, 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 very long EVA for Zelmore. She's probably broken a few records there. So we'll deorbit her, and we'll bring her back. We got the new texture replacer for Kerbal Space Program 1.4.5 installed as well. Zelmore has a hairstyle we haven't seen before. And we're going to be seeing a few of these things as we progress in the Kerbal Space Program series. We are not going to go too fast. Last time I did that, I knocked out some tourists unconscious. We're going to try this properly. Come on, Zelmore. Let's bring you back home safe. We still have a long ways to go. While we can get some Mark II craft up to low Eve orbit and bring them back in one piece, we're going to need stronger engines to be able to bring up Mark III craft. We need to be able to bring up 2.5 meter assemblies in single stage to orbit craft, much like the Fat Star series, but we're going to need much stronger engines for this. And we are going to progress our science to get the Lucifer dual mode engine. Lucifer is much like the Rapier. And here comes Zelmore Kerman re-entering. Really quick. Yeah, the Lucifer dual mode engine is much like the Rapier engine. In fact, it's modeled off the Rapier engine from Stock Kerbal Space Program. But of course it uses oxidizer instead of liquid fuel when used above Eve, like the rest of the series of the explodium breathing engines. With the Lucifer engine, we should be able to build larger craft to get them up into low Eve orbit. There we go, single pass re-entry, pretty high G's, but we're pretty used to that now. At least with the single stage to orbit craft that brought this pod up, we were able to bring Zelmore Kerman home for a mere 20,000 funds. Much less than the stock Eve orbital launcher that we've been using all this time. So we're saving some funds, and we're going to make a lot of funds bringing Zelmore here back home safe. The series is going to continue for a bit. Again, we've got to get a Mark III single stage to orbit craft going so we can bring up much larger assemblies up to low Eve orbit on the cheap. If I can reproduce the Fat Star 3, then we will be set. Hey, and we've got tourists still above Gilly, we've got to explore Bin, we've got to explore Duna, we've got all kinds of things we can do on this playthrough just yet. Especially bringing Zell here back home safe. There she is. And with yet another pilot brought home, we continue to expand our crew roster, and we even get a few... Oh, look at that. We seem to have missed surface samples over here in the Midlands. So hey, more science. We'll get more science. But since we need 2 surface samples and we only have 1 pod here, what we're going to do is we're going to send Zell out. We're going to recover her, so she'll have 1 sample, and then we'll have the other sample aboard the pod, which we'll recover separately. We'll get full science for these surface samples. There we go. Not too bad. As we continue to work on this, we've got a lot of stuff going on in Gilly, but we will catch up with Valentina and her friends in a future episode. Until then, I'm not manly. Fly safe.